it certainly looked like everything told us it was going to be 90% chance of rain, and we had some electrical with we were going to do the work at the new Hitzman Park for the playground. So about this morning, that Saturday morning about 8 o'clock, I got some calls about canceling, and we canceled. Of course, then it didn't rain. So that's the best way to prevent rain, is just to cancel an event. So we will be rescheduling that, though, for I believe this Saturday at 10:30. But the good news is the equipment is there. It is open. My understanding from St. Matthews is about 50 people did show up and use the equipment, and it was good to have everybody there, and it's good to have the new equipment in Hitzman Park. So we're excited about that. We'll be back out Saturday to be there. But anyways, other than that, last week I had the opportunity to be in Washington and New York. My Washington trip was mainly related to League of Cities. Chris and I went up there on Sunday, left there Tuesday. He came back to Pensacola. I proceeded to New York, where we met with the Escape people and James Lima, who are doing the work for us, doing the city waterfront plan, including the portion that is being supported by the Center for Civic Engagement is doing the bridge, the 3-mile bridge, all the way to about Joe Patty's, and the city is doing Joe Patty's all the way around, all the way over to the yacht club and into Bayou Chico. So again, we met on that and had some discussions. So excited about what's happening with that. In D.C., we had several good meetings. We met with the executive office. We were able to meet with the presidents and our governmental people. It was a good meeting. We talked about a lot of things that were going on here in Pensacola. Certainly thanked them for what they had provided support to us financially for ST, and then looked at some of the things that were going on with the port. They were particularly interested in the port and numbers that we were doing, and we kind of explained to them how we were looking to, while we still were doing, we are doing shipping, and we got a few things that are going on a little bit more for some niche cargo markets that Amy's been working on. What we've really been doing a lot of is certainly utilizing it from a sort of a maintenance, repair, and overhaul for the things that we're doing, like the boat that's out there right now from Blue Origin. So we're very excited. The opportunities that are there for the port, and we're going to keep moving forward on those. We certainly explained that we're looking to do, we think our port can be a very good niche port. There are projects that are out there that'll work, that won't really interfere with downtown, and we're certainly trying to make that work for our port. And I think Amy's been doing a great job with that. We then met with Representative Congressman Matt Gaetz, and we met with Congressman Neil Dunn over in Panama City. We had a good conversation with them about several of the things that are happening in Northwest Florida. Certainly how ST Engineering can be, I really think, a catalyst for really an aviation industry cluster in all of Northwest Florida. That was one of the things we talked to, especially to Dr. Dunn, about all the way over in Panama City. I think they'll benefit from this and some of the things that we're doing. So we had a good conversation with him and with Matt, and then we ended up meeting that evening. Chris and I met with several other people across cities across the state of Florida. The Florida League of Cities hosted an event. We were able to catch up and meet a lot of people across the Florida League of Cities, which in 2 weeks, not this week, but the following week, will be in Tallahassee for our day down there. So we did discuss a couple of things that are happening in Tallahassee. Then Tuesday morning, I met with Senators Rubio and Senator Scott's staff. I also had the opportunity, local Pensacolian Alice James works for Senator Lindsey Graham, had the opportunity to meet Senator Graham and for breakfast that morning, and told him that I will be going this week, which I was going to talk about a little bit later. I'm going to Charleston for the Mayor's Institute on Design, so we'll be in Charleston, and so we were just talking about a couple things in South Carolina, but we had a good time meeting with him. Had a very productive meeting with Rubio, and it was also good with Scott's staff. I mean, clearly they're continuing to kind of put things together, and it was good to meet with them, and they certainly expressed an affinity for this area, and we thank them for all the support that, as Governor Scott, he had given this area, and we hope certainly as Senator Scott, he will continue to look out for Northwest Florida. So after those meetings, I got on a train and went to New York. We met with James Lima, who took us over. He had been at Governor's Island, and he took us over to Governor's Island to look at the harbor school they have there. It was one of the things that came out of the port study that just came out last week. And we'll be getting that over to council and bringing that forward. But one of the things it talked about was the opportunity to do education in the marine industries. Certainly when you look at things like welding, boat operations were some other things that we saw. It was very impressive. Marine science, their school was very impressive. I don't know that we'll go get as in-depth as that, but there's no doubt I think some of the programs that they're doing, we're already doing. We can partner with the Escambia County school system that's already doing some of these things, and we can just find ways to make it accessible at the port. Again, we think the things that we've got going out there with oysters, some of the other things that potentially could happen with research, there's a real opportunity to still bring that first building out of the fence line, have it available for research, and it can be done for educational purposes. So going to the harbor school was just kind of a good chance to see some of the things that we could do as we move forward. So that was exciting. Wednesday morning, I woke up with DC Reeves, who was there, and Andrew Rothfeder and Terry Horn. I woke up with them, and we went and walked the High Line, mainly in the event that as we look, I think one of the things that Scape's going to be looking at, certainly the connectivity, the opportunity for us to do some expanded, making things more walkable, certainly along our waterfront, and opening it up with sort of a park similar to that. That's a linear park. And enhance experiences. So it was just kind of good to see what's there and somebody who had done a linear park and what it looked like. So it was good to walk that. Then we met with Scape, and we had a very good meeting with them. They started their preliminaries. Now, they had not done as much stuff on the city work because we'd only signed the contracts a couple of weeks ago. They came down here, but they weren't as prepared on the city's portion. They showed us some things that they had been doing between Joe Patty's and the yacht club, but they were mainly showing us the portion they'd done from the bridge to Joe Patty's. So they were working through that, and it was a fairly good. I think they're moving along in the right direction. Then we did have a brief meeting where DPZ came in there only because Scape's scope kind of crosses over, and they wanted to see what Scape would be presenting, and so we did have a chance to talk a little bit about that with them. I'm still looking forward to what they're coming forward with on the parcels out here at the Maritime Park, as well as the old ECUA property. In fact, that's one of the things I'm going to Charleston this week to discuss with the Mayor's Institute for Design about what we'll be looking at, and again, having a chance to look at it. My understanding in this group, I've actually got homework to do. There are going to be about 7 other cities there, and we each make presentations, and we each kind of work to critique what's happening and learn from what other communities are doing. So I'm excited about my time in Charleston, and that I'll be learning from all these other communities, and they'll have a chance to critique what we're doing in Pensacola. So I'm interested to see what that happens. This was something that was put together, told to me by the Jeff Speck with DPC, that I ought to get involved with, and it would be a good thing. And so I'm looking forward to it. And again, I think it's one of those things you learn from other communities. There are things you can see that happen in other communities, and you can learn from. So I'm excited to see how this goes this week. I thought it was a conference I was just attending. I didn't realize I was actually going to have homework, and I've got to have a plan ready to go. And so, but I'm looking to see what they say about our Maritime Park and the waterfront assets that we have there and what we need to be looking at. So again, these are some of the things that we did last week, and again, some of the things I'll be doing this week as we go to Charleston. We've got a lot of other things happening here. We're in the middle of trying to implement all the things from the transition team. Some of those things are already in process of being implemented. Some of those, again, will take some time. We're meeting this morning with Quinn Stigger to begin discussion about the survey that for the employees that will begin really dealing in delving into culture. So changing the culture and trying to shape things going forward. So we're very excited about that. So all these things are moving forward. It's just going to take some time to implement them all. But again, we continue to press forward on all these things. Other stuff this week, I think, as I said, we'll be at the end of the week. We'll be meeting with we'll have the thing at the Scenic Heights out there at Hitzman Park at 10:30. So we hope as many people will be out there, and we're actually going to. Hopefully the rain will stay away, and we'll actually have a ceremony. So it'll be nice. But other than that, we keep looking to move forward, and we got a lot of new hires out there that I think the assistant county city administrator closed out on Friday. I know that over the weekend, I know Chris was looking, and several people were looking at the PIO people, so I'm looking forward to see where they are with that. So again, we've got a lot of decisions we've got to start making, and we'll be making them over the next couple of weeks. But that's kind of where we are. I'm here to answer your questions and want to know what you want to talk about. Andrew, I see you smiling at me, so.
I'll have to go first.
Jeremy?
What did you see up in New York? Like, what is Skate coming up with?
Well, I think they're going to work on two things that are coming together, and they really want the community to decide what those things are. But I do think from the very beginning, some of the things that I thought were really neat were some of what they showed us that they're coming together for Bruce Beach. And they also, when we were on Governor's Island, the southern tip of Governor's Island has really been turned into kind of a waterfront park there. It's a little bit interesting, although I think ours will be much better because, you have to take the ferry to get to Governor's Island. It's kind of difficult to get there, whereas ours will certainly be walkable. I think the other big thing we spent a lot of time discussing on, I really think the connectivity in the linear park and sort of getting that experience that people can connect. They made mention, we have Plaza de Luna, we have the Maritime Park, we have the waterfront, we have Bartram and the waterfront along the bayfront, and we also have Bruce Beach. But these really aren't very well connected, and how we shape the experience for people to be able to walk the community and connect these all together is one of the things we talked about. I think that's going to come through in what they end up presenting to us, because we did spend a lot of time talking about that. And again, there are things that fit into everything else. We've talked about making things more walkable. We want that to happen. We want it to make it easier for people who come in here and tourists. Again, all these things, it might have been nice if we had had more walkability shaped up before we ended up having the ferry. But, as you look at things like the ferry experience, if you have stuff that people are going to come here and they won't necessarily have cars, but we don't want them to have cars in a lot of ways. We want our tourists to come down here and be able to move and be able to walk. The next step would be eventually us looking at how we can maybe help in some kind of like a trolley system that we've talked about before. I mean, I'm not saying we're there yet, but I mean, as you look at these things, but before we got to do that, we got to figure out how we can connect everything. And so that was a lot of discussion about that. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's going to be one of the things we've talked about, and so I'm excited about it. Yes.
Yeah,
Admiral?
Mr. Mayor, originally on the Maritime Park, I remember a design that had public access, but it also had kind of retail establishments along the way, and I was just wondering, is that coming back on board as you all rethink the situation?
Yes, and thank you, Admiral. There is discussion. That's a different group. That's not necessarily what the Skate group is looking at, but that is what the master plan that DPZ is looking at, and they are looking at what ends up happening and how do we utilize the remaining parcels. There are several parcels that are left there, and I think the idea is we're going to need parking, but we're going to need more than parking. There was certainly the idea discussed with DPZ just while we were there. They were discussing having some kind of a central parking area, and then having it wrapped sort of like what you see with Southtown, having a sort of a deck in the middle, and then it would be wrapped by other things that would be retail and other stuff, mixed use. There was a lot of good discussion when we were in that group with a desire to bring more residential onto that side of downtown. I think it will, the shops, for them to be successful over there, will have to have some level of retail over there. I mean, there's some level of residential over there. So there were things that were discussed, how that happens. But there was also a lot of discussion on how to make sure whatever that focus is, that there are affordability options for people as they go forward. But there's no doubt that I think the desire to, if we're going to make that area and we're going to turn it into retail shops, we've got to make it successful. Some of it will be from outside area people, but what kind of helps also move the day-to-day for those people is having locals that are living there. And so I do think that there's going to be a component of DPZ that says, if not on so much, some of it maybe on the maritime part, but certainly potentially some other uses that would be residential uses on the ECUA property. So as we move forward, I think that's what you're going to see. Yes.
How would you ensure the affordable housing?
Those are things that everyone's still struggling to work with, but it's one of those things we're working on. I have several things I got to catch up with Commissioner May. We did not get together because of some of my traveling and his traveling in the month of March. We're going to get together in April, but I still think we're trying to deal with some of the issues of homelessness and what do we deal with that. And then the second thing is really how do we deal with affordability. I really think a lot of the fact that there's a lot of this land in the downtown area that needs infill, and a lot of it's owned by the county. It ends up people hadn't paid their taxes. The county has it. I think a plan that would be working along those ways to develop some of those parcels into affordable housing opportunities, both rental and owner occupant, I think would be big. I know that's what Commissioner May's been wanting to do, and I've been wanting to figure out how to roll that out as well. So it's kind of the ball's been in his court, and he's been trying to figure out how he wants to do it. But I'm more than willing to work with him to make that happen.
You've talked in the past about gentrification and how taking something down and building something more expensive obviously drives that. Won't that same thing be true if you do infill housing?
The infill housing that we want to do on that would be affordable. I mean, you'd have to be, the only way you would qualify for it, the government has, it'd be sort of in the sense of what Habitat's always done with the land. You have the land, so you make it affordable by the right applicants giving the land away, but they would have sort of a negative pledge on against the cost of the land. So you take the land cost out of it. Now you would still have the construction cost, but the idea is trying to figure out how you make that work. I would not, we've always thought of it, and Habitat's always pursued it in the way of owner occupant. I'm not opposed to looking at leasing, but I clearly want to make sure that the benefit accrues to the individual who would be living there. But I understand that perhaps not everyone would be, it doesn't work out. Home ownership doesn't work out for everyone. So is there the opportunity for people to take some of those houses of somebody that could then lease it? But both the city and the county would need to make sure that whatever those rents were the ones that we would expect would be reasonable for the individuals to be able to pay. But I think that's the way you utilize it. You take out some of the costs that the county would have and the city would have in the land. You try to make that and sort of give a negative pledge where the citizen doesn't have to pay for that. But what we get is making sure that we have income in our developments. I see you still looking at me puzzled.
Oh, I'm just doing the math. I mean, like if a parcel is 30 grand and the house is 200 grand, it doesn't seem like you're going to really generate much of a distinction in terms of income level.
Well, there's no doubt that the construction costs we'd have to work with and see what's going on there. But I think one of the challenges is certainly the cost of land is making things more expensive as we move forward. So I think that's a huge component to what ends up happening to the housing. But I mean, there's no doubt we'd have to work and see how we could move down construction cost. Jim?
Yeah. Changing topics a little bit, on the contract employees, you said that you want to end that system. How far along are you in that system? How many contract employees are left?
And again, I'd have to work a little bit with Chris and Keith on that. I don't know how many we have, but we made it very clear that really outside of the as we start new employees and new positions, we will not be doing contracts. We will be doing, the only people that will really have contracts will be the city attorney and the city administrator. Those are the two positions that sort of will come under the direction of the mayor and probably should have should have contracts. The rest of them, we're trying to move out as we can. I was a little unclear on one thing. Some of those we're able to work out as we work with some of the employees. Some of them, though, have contracts that continue to go on between just a year level of service. We'd have to move them in or work with them, and we're looking at that. I know it's one of the things we've been in our executive committee with Keith and with Chris. We've been trying to look at how we transition out of those contracts. There's no doubt, but it was sort of a culture that we inherited, and we're moving to really change that culture. And a part of that is us starting with the survey for the employees that I think we're meeting on right after this, and we're looking to get set up in April. So I believe we're still shooting for April to do the employee surveys and get that working and moving forward. And again, it's not just a one-time survey; it's a periodic survey so that we're making sure. Chris, the question was asked: how many people do we still have on contracts, and how many have we taken off so far? And I know right now we had 80 or something, and we've taken off a handful of them. I know we hadn't taken a lot of them off, but I told them that as we move forward, we're not giving contracts for any positions other than the city administrator and the city attorney.
That's correct, but I couldn't tell you the exact number that we have under contract right now. So, obviously, the PIO was and won't be. The HR was and won't be. The sanitation director was and won't be.
I knew we were making headway.
With the exact number.
So we're working through the attrition of it.
Is it going to have to go through attrition, or is there an option in the contract?
We're working through all those things, and we haven't. It's one of the things we've been discussing, and we don't have an exact way to get through there. But some of it is we're continuing to work, and we will with the employees as those contract employees as we come up with them over term. I mean, I know. Well, you know, some of the other positions in the legal department also don't have contracts anymore. So again, we're moving through a couple of those, but outside of attrition at this point, we don't really have a total mechanism that we can move through. But we're trying to position it, I think, show what we want to do going forward with the culture. I think it will hopefully allow us to get to a point where we can deal effectively with those contracts.
Another follow-up question. The former HR director's contract was originally signed in February 2014. Was there a chance to renegotiate it in February before he left, or was it?
No, I don't know. There wasn't a chance to renegotiate Edward's contract, Mr. Sissons. Yeah.
We didn't do any of that.
Yeah. So there wasn't anything through there. So we did discuss a couple of things. I know I'd been discussing a couple of things last week while I was on the train with Andy about that contract, and I came back and I talked with both Susan and Chris about it. They had a little bit different read than Andy did, and I did ask Susan to try to get together with him to understand again but again, from that standpoint, we're trying to get out of those contracts.
Because his contract had two options, or essentially a 30-day severance and a 90-day severance, and going with the 90-day severance.
Well, and again, that's what I wanted to find out a little bit, because I don't disagree with the way I thought I read it, the way Andy saw it, but you know, when I talked with Chris and with Susan, they didn't see it as we had any option outside that. So I said, and Susan said, hey, a lot of these things within the contract depend upon other languages within the contract that's in it. So that's why I asked Susan to talk to Andy about that. Now, he and I conversed back and forth on that train trip. We talked about that contract, and I saw it, and I agree when I saw what you saw. But Susan felt like that somehow that wasn't applicable based on something else in the other terms of the contract. So I did ask her to reach out to Andy. Yes.
On Bruce Beach, I've never been entirely clear just how clean either the sand or the water in that vicinity is. Do we have a good read on that? Maybe it's a question more for Keith. I don't know, but going swimming in that area. I mean, there's glass, things like that. I'm just curious as a recreational area.
It was a recreational area. I mean, it was utilized as that. There was discussion about that. The problem more about moving towards swimming that we're not as excited about. We certainly like it. I've paddleboarded out there. We've done other things that have been out there, but there is a problem. There was a shipbuilding out there at one time. That's why there's a fairly big drop off. I think Mr. Leroy and some other people have discussed that there were children that actually drowned out there because of that drop off. There's a fairly significant area out there where it just drops fairly deep because that's where the ship. So when you look at it from the air, you're like, if you go sort of one way to the left, you kind of walk out almost all the way to where that little thing comes in. Sort of protect that area right there along the Maritime Park, that little jetty. But in other areas, it's quite deep. So again, we haven't really discussed as much what the plan is going forward as far as that. But we'll certainly make sure we test any water quality, anything else. My understanding is the park itself was fine for people as far as recreational use to be out there on the park.
Yeah, from what we know, it's mostly just construction, demolition, debris that's inert, concrete, and things like that. It's mostly inert.
So
the water's clean. The topography is a question. Are we going to buoy it or put markers up or anything like that?
Again, a lot of that is coming out of that. That was one of the things that we discussed with Scape, and I mean they were talking about we could have people swimming out here, and I mean that whole topic came up that we have to be careful on the swimming thing because there's a fairly significant drop off. It goes from very shallow to just right, very deep right away, and that's really coming out of that whole area where it was dug that way years ago. So again, we would have to look and see what we're going to do, but I think that's going to be the finished product of what Scape comes back with us. There were some exciting points that they talked about. There was even a way. Some of the debris that is left there, they talked about taking it away, and Scape actually said there's a place on Governor's Island where they took the debris together and they create a sort of a path that you walk up to, and it's kind of a vista up on top of it, and so you get it kind of above the trees, and you can see. And so they talked about keeping that area and making it a part of the park. So there are a couple of things that they've got, that I don't want to spoil their report, but these were some of the things we talked about, and I think they'll come up with a kind of something that could be shown conceptually to do with the park and how it could be utilized. Yes.
This might be more for Keith. When you say the water's clean, as far as we know, how do we know what kind of testing is out there? Because this whole area here got a good bit of contamination associated with it.
The water quality is going to vary depending on the storm water.
It's the bay water. It's going to be the same water eventually as you get anywhere up and down the bay. It's more going to be influenced by the outfall of your storm water than necessarily what's there.
Similar to what you get you have the water quality safety warning or swim advisories for by Chico or by Grand at Navy Point, where when there's been a lot of rain, there's going to be a lot of bacteria. If it's been dry, so it's going to vary. Water quality will vary with the rainfall and stormwater discharge from the outfall.
And so, the water quality, for everybody else that didn't hear, the water quality out there will be mainly influenced by rainfall, not as much by what's there. And once you get kind of water, yes, it's sort of as you go further along, but it changes. But for the most part, water's generally consistent. It's based on what comes out of that outfall. Yes.
The new positions that you're looking to hire, specifically the higher up ones, assistant administrator and the complete streets, what is the process going to be for? You're talking about maybe having a committee look at those.
I think Chris and sort of the executive team are looking at those, and I think when we talked about it, I think he took home I forget how many different people last night, and I told him yes, I would like you to get that down to a handful of people and come forward to me and let's talk about them when we get there. So he's, he and I think Keith and some others on the executive team will be trying to bring those down to a handful of people, and we'll be talking about them as we get there.
And there's outline criteria that they, candidates look at.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, Chris, if you.
Well, we spent the weekend looking at the PIO position, and we'll probably recommend a half dozen that have, local government experience or marketing experience, news experience. Some of y'all that are in the room have backgrounds like y'all. So we'll propose a half dozen, let the mayor look at them, and go from there. If he wants to do one-on-one interviews, we'll probably narrow the list down. As you'd expect, we've got some internal candidates and some external ones, so we'll kind of break them down like that. We anticipate doing the same thing with the deputy position, trying to take, almost 100 applications and get it down to, we can always go to a phase 2. If the mayor doesn't like the, the short list that we give him, we can go from there. Same on sanitation.
So, how many applicants did we have for PIO that you went through? 60.
And almost 100 for the assistant administrator.
He said almost 100.
111.
Okay, 111. So yeah.
On the complete streets position,
Yes.
there was a little bit of chatter out there that you had promised that to Drew in exchange for his support in the campaign.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
We didn't even have a complete streets position when we talked about it when I was in the campaign. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I laughed. I said, we heard some of that. I said, I thought it was supposed to be the PIO because we didn't even have this. So, from that standpoint, if Drew applies for it, he's welcome to apply for it. We're not telling anybody they can or can't apply for anything. I didn't even know where we were going with it until we saw the recommendations. But clearly, I think the issue, when we've seen the council, we've seen the number of accidents that happened in our first 100 days, it really became apparent that was something that we needed to be working with. And I think the complete streets move was more direction of what was going on with council and where they were wanting to go. But rather than looking at a piecemeal, I'm going to take this road in this district or that district, what we said was, okay, well, why don't we step away from that? Why don't we take a holistic approach? It just so happened that was the same thing that was being recommended from that committee. Whether Drew applies or not, that's going to be there for him on that, and we'll evaluate it with everyone else that comes in.
But y'all didn't have those kind of discussions.
No.
What are you looking for? I mean, that's, kind of you feel that, is there a complete streets degree or?
I think we're looking for people who can move us in the direction of what we want to achieve, and sort of there seems to be a debate whether this is on the planning side or the engineering side. I do think one of the challenges is certainly the challenge with those people who have been advocates of biking and cycling indicate that usually they have not had as much success from the engineering as they have from the planning side. Engineers, again, the general design is how can I move this thing as fast as possible and get it there, from that standpoint. Not to say that they're not concerned with safety, but they're concerned with a lot of things at once, and sometimes multimodal has not been as much of a priority for them as cars. So I'm not saying it couldn't be somebody technical. I couldn't be somebody more on the planning side. We're sort of looking for it. What we've heard is there are other cities that have done this that do have people on staff. Generally, some cities have multiple people. We're going for one person right now. That's all we can afford, and that's what we're going to have. But it's not uncommon for some cities, even Tallahassee, my understanding, which isn't much larger than us, to have multiple people in that capacity. So at this particular time, we're just looking for one person.
The people at the other cities, are they engineer based?
A little bit of both. What we've seen is a little bit of engineering. They have multiple people, so they can afford that option. Right now, we're looking for one person, so we don't know whether we're we also had a series of problems with people getting hit. So, I mean, let's see what happens.
I need to correct the assistant city administrator. There's 119, not 111.
119 applications, so for the assistant city administrator.
The hiring process for the complete streets position, you told me last week you were in support of a committee, so is that just going to be the executive team doing the committee?
And we haven't discussed how that one would how that would go. We are just in the process of starting the advertisement, so it's gonna be a little. The good news is we'll look through a couple of these first, and we'll see what happens. I don't know. I think Chris and the executive team are maybe a little bit more comfortable with positions that they understand, like a PIO or a. Knows they're going to term. Now they're supposed to be doing the job, and we're going to lean on them for their, new to us moving forward in this kind of gap position. But with HR has a lot of things. They're going to have a lot of things ahead of them.
You brought them from the county to do HR?
Rod Powell was at the county. We need somebody to step in, and was there. I think Keith had certainly had Rod working at the county. Keith had introduced him to Chris, and they met probably a while back before we were trying to make this decision. We knew we were going to have to do something with HR, and we had that. He started having those discussions.
Have you had any more discussions on the homeless panhandling front?
Commissioner May and I, since February, have not had the opportunity to meet. We've talked briefly about wanting to create a summit with the stakeholders that are in the homeless area, that are in our not-for-profit kind of area, and we would like them to take a look at and see if the ideas that we're talking about, if they are agreeable to working within it, because they're going to have to be participants in this system. It's going to have to work for them. So we're looking at that direction. If it goes that direction, then we will begin to move forward with something. If we begin to move forward with that, I mean, clearly I've said that as a part of that, coming out of that, we do plan to address panhandling. But I think we want to find out where is it we're going, and where we kind of, if we go to not-for-profits and they're a whole lot better, because they're going to have to be participants in it. If they don't, then we'll look to tweak, and we'll do what we can.
Insofar as the Come As You Are facility, or kind of the base for nonprofits to help people out of, do you have any kind of physical site in mind?
Commissioner May and I have talked about it. I tend to think it's going to be somewhere where we have other governmental services. I think it will fit. You see a lot of those shelters in. I would say it's sort of a core area that's either around the town and country area that kind of extends down Pace into the West Cervantes area of Brownsville. I think if we looked at it, that area has already a lot of things that fit for what's needed transportation-wise, community services, a variety of things. Healthcare is nearby. We're going to have all of those things associated with us. I mean, clearly the mental health aspect and having Lakeview in close proximity to that corridor is also good. I'm not saying it couldn't be somewhere else, but when we've had our discussions, and certainly those areas, as you look in that whole corridor, it's an area that kind of borders sort of where the city and the county both come together, and so we believe it would work in a very good, any of those places would work in the sense of having close proximity to both city and county. I mean, if you took it and you moved it, somewhere else that was, more in the county, it would be less accessible from the city perspective or vice versa. So, I mean, that corridor has a lot of positive things for moving this, where we want to go. Now, where it is exactly that, is it in Brownsville? Is it Town and Country? I don't know. At this particular time, we haven't discussed specifics, but we have discussed the idea that we think there are a variety of things happening, transportation, healthcare, a variety of things that we could do, not to mention community the county somewhere close to those services.
Any kind of timeline on that summit or theoretical timeline?
It's supposed to be getting scheduled in April, so I don't have the exact date sitting in front of me, but we tried to do it in March, and like I said, my calendar I was out of town a lot, and then Commissioner May was out of town a lot, so we asked for it to be put forward in April. And I don't know, I could check with Susan and Lauren upstairs. They were kind of working on that, trying to find a time that would work. But you're putting together a lot of people, so we're trying to juggle a lot of schedules to find a date, and I know that's been the challenge. Yes.
On the location, because I have the same question, but it seems like one of the challenges you're going to have there is if we're trying to draw people into taking care of them and also away from being panhandling if they're actually homeless, geographical proximity to those places where they panhandle is the challenge, right? If you have a little farther away, like the areas you're talking about, will they go there? But if you have it closer, do you want it in that vicinity? How do you kind of balance that question?
I mean, it's the same thing. The challenge that you end up having is waterfronts there, several other places in that same area. It's because one, the main bus systems there, train is a significant item. Clearly, dealing with some of those things is going to be challenging. We understand that it is challenging within a neighborhood and a variety of other things. Got to find somewhere that has the other services. I think the likelihood of things like mental health services, like Commissioner and I discussed Brownsville only in the sense that we have areas of land that are right by the Brownsville Community Center, which is, again, almost on the border between the city and the county. So, I mean, we're trying to figure it out if it's probably going to be in the Town and Country area or the Brownsville area. So we haven't talked about it. We'd like to talk with our partners and ask them for locations for their thought, but that was our initial thought. So again, it's going to have to work. But, I think if we begin to have this process, I would hope that panhandling, we start to begin to move things away from that both in the city and the county, so that these are not options where we're not taxing anybody with any neighborhood with those issues. If there's a panhandling ordinance for both the city and the county, that's what we've got to do. And when Commissioner May and I've talked, we've said whatever we make the solution for the county or the city, it's got to be the same. So it's not a difference in what one jurisdiction enforces and what the other one enforces.
So is the idea to people who are panhandling, is the idea to get them to take advantage of the shelter
Absolutely.
instead of
Absolutely.
and then, or is it more that once you've created the shelter you can legally say what we're doing for the homeless, therefore we can also enforce the panhandling, or all the above?
It's a little bit of all the above, but the idea is we are not helping those individuals by giving money to them. Generally all you're doing is perpetuating the addiction that generally a lot of them keeps them homeless. So what you want to do, and again, there are a lot of people who end up giving food, and I totally get that. At least that's aimed at their sustenance. But what we'd like to do is to be able to bring that food into this place and be able to bring them there and then connect them with actual long-term solutions for them. Again, everybody's different. Some people may like Chautauqua Forest and being outside. Some people may like Waterfront Mission. Some people may like Richards Memorial. I think the variety of the solution to help you get out of your condition is as varied as the individual. So I like the fact of partnering with these other agencies that have differing solutions. because I think everybody that comes here. Now, the eventual part is if there are going to be some people that don't want to comply with this. And what I would say with them is you don't have to live in Escambia County or the City of Pensacola. You don't have to panhandle here. There are other places that you may want to go. But we're going to have a system in place for you to participate in. We're going to be very cognizant of trying to get you better. But if that's not what you want to do and you simply want to go on panhandling, then perhaps you need to move to a different location.
Mayor, the date that we're shooting for the Homeless Summit is April 5th from 11 to 2.
There you go. April 5th, 11 to 2. Thank you. Yes.
Well, I know we're just getting way out ahead of this, and so I don't want to ask a really off-the-wall question, but when we talk about eventually sending the message to panhandlers that you're not welcome in a city or in a county, so many municipalities bump up against free speech when they really try to significantly enforce against panhandling. So this is why it may be way down the road to talk about, but what could the city or the county do in terms of ordinances that would actually really discourage it?
I think you could be doing that. I think you could also end up discouraging the giving. Now, let me be very clear. If you want to pull in a parking lot and go give somebody money, absolutely 100%. You cannot. It's already illegal to give money from the roadbed. The challenge is finding the panhandler doesn't really change anything. But I mean, do we look at finding the giver? I mean, those are all potentials. I mean, those are things that we would look at. And somebody always says about funding. I said, hey, maybe those are things we got to look at. Is finding the giver, and the giver ends up contributing if you make it like some kind of a traffic situation, because it's already against state law, traffic law. You're not allowed to give money from your car, but we've seen 100 people do it. So there are all kind of ways to do that with camera enforcement, a variety of other things. Do we look at those things moving forward? I mean, I'm a big believer. If people can't get money, they'll quit doing it. So sometimes the people give it. I mean, and here's the deal. I don't think anybody's going to, I mean, if they want to go pull in a parking lot in a private lot and give the individual money, absolutely can do it. I just don't think it will end up happening. So these are things that you are not allowed to take on a public road to be giving out money. But we have people that do it every day here. So we'll see what happens as we move forward. Yes?
And this is kind of a philosophical question. Why is the city against people giving panhandlers money, aside from maybe safety concerns in the roadway?
Jeremy, I'm not. You want to pull in and give anybody you want to, I'm totally for it.
But you say it doesn't help people, which is kind of a blanket statement, because I'm sure there are instances where it does help people. So why does the city want to discourage that?
There is a law on the books that you cannot give stuff in the roadway. Quit giving it in the roadway. If you pull into a private lot and you want to do that, and you want to give away your money, I'm more power to you. Do it legally. That's all I'm asking. I mean, hey, somebody wants to buy a parking lot and just turn it into a free place for people to come and give money. If they want to do that, more power to them. I mean, there are all kind of things, creative ways people can do. I just haven't found many people that say, I want to find a way to make the exchange of money. But if somebody wants to do that, they could find a way to make that happen. But it's got to be on private property. It's got to be done in a way that legally works with the laws that are there.
Related to that, how often does the city get complaints about panhandling in terms of
Daily.
quality of life, appearance
Hourly.
of the city?
Minutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have a lot of citizens that are like, they're tired of it. It came out of the transition team. They're like, get rid of this. We're tired of this. So there's a desire to have something there. My issue is, if you want to do it legally, then find a way. The people who want to do this and they feel like the need to give, find a way to set it up and legally exchange and meet somebody call them to your house, give them money there. I don't care how you do it, just do it legally.
So you're saying in the future maybe police could enforce this a little bit more when it comes to the drivers?
I'm simply saying those are options out there that I think we've got to critically have the discussion of all the way around. There's no doubt that at some point, that's what's got to happen. It is illegal for the driver to give money in the road. It is illegal already. I mean, that's state law. The question is enforcement. We hadn't been enforcing it.
What would your response be? Because the find the giver approach?
Jeremy, I mean, we haven't talked about how we would do it or one way or the other, but I know it could be done. I mean, you could move in that direction.
But just the suggestion of that is kind of, I mean, it has echoes if you remember the little old lady who beats the parking meters but then gets arrested for it. You remember this happened years ago?
No, I mean,
Because it's technically illegal to do that. But that sounds a little backwards because you have people trying to help people and to find them.
if they want to pull off the road, there is nothing wrong with them pulling into the parking lot or doing something else there on private property. Now, that private property owner may not want them exchanging stuff on their private property. But that's going to be a civil matter between those individuals. But I mean, all that. More power to you. I mean, you have the right to do that. Start finding out how you can get and do it in a legal way, and that's all I'm asking. If that's what you want to do. I find what generally happens with most people is it's not necessarily that's what they want to do. I think they feel it's a buying need. It's a need for, hey, I feel like I've done something, and you have a sense of compassion. I mean, that's what ends up happening. But when you do it outside of the right of, when do it in the roadway, you are technically breaking the law. And I think what the people are asking us to do is enforce the law that is there. But the hard part is enforcing it against the panhandler is very difficult. So perhaps the enforcement needs to go against the giver. That's all I'm saying. That would be a lot easier way to do it. For some reason, they have funds. That's why they're giving it. If you made the fines for it that would fund the Come As You Are shelter, I mean, it's kind of what they're looking to give. I mean, help them give to what they want to give to. I mean, I would just love it if you decided you wanted to. If homelessness is what you're about, then help fund this shelter. I mean, give us $1 a day, whatever. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, people could be welcome to come there and give $1. I mean, we'd have a big bucket out there at the shelter. I mean, however we can find a way to do it, we'll do it. If we need to have a big bucket there and just have people stop by and give us donations to help fund that shelter, that's good. That might take away the need for people to feel like they can give freely.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are more like givings of opportunity. It's right there. They're not going to drive
The idea then is if that's the sincerity of what they're doing, then let's put some effort into and thought into how we all collectively give.
Yeah, I mean, sincerity has to have convenience sometimes, right?
Sincerity doesn't have to have convenience. Convenience has convenience.